for your attendance at today's webinar. Important topic today for those of us who have not finalized our preparations for the end of Windows 7. This webinar is for you. We're going to talk about, in a very efficient manner, I hope, the choices we have for Windows 7, upgrades to Windows 10, what happens if we don't upgrade, what are the ramifications in either direction. We'll talk about Windows 10, what are some benefits and some considerations as we move from Windows 7 to 10. What are some licensing options, setup recommendations? The goal today is to help everyone understand what our choices are and how important it is, or not, compared, depending on your perspective, to replace Windows 7. So I want to thank those of you who are long-term clients who are in attendance. We very much value our relationship with hundreds of healthcare and non-healthcare providers that have been a part of our family for many, many years in a lot of cases. We serve, for those of you not familiar with PBSI, businesses, healthcare operations, nonprofit organizations in Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. And as CEO, I'm very, very blessed to be able to say that the large majority of our staff have been with PBSI for more than 10 years, and I know that knowledgeable staff really help clients. The goal of PBSI in general is to help clients with security and IT that really works effectively. The goal of this webinar is to inform and educate. So hope you find this information useful. Let's dive in. Windows 7. Many don't know, it was actually announced, end of life was announced in January of 2015, now almost 5 years ago. For some time now, at least a couple of years, Microsoft has announced that all support, including bug fixes and security fixes, will be discontinued as of January 14th next year. So only a couple of months away at this point. What does this really mean? It means no security patches. It means no support available. So translate that. No security patches. Windows 7 was replaced by Windows 8 and then 10, primarily from Microsoft's own statements because of unfixable security vulnerabilities in Windows 7. And in fact, there are far fewer security vulnerabilities in the current version of Windows. The fact is, new updates happen all the time with Windows 7 still. Why is that true? Because vulnerabilities continue to be uncovered and they continue to be fixed. And hackers, I'm anticipating, eagerly await January 14th because they know that today you have attackers and you have defenders. Next January, your primary defender, that's Microsoft, retires. And no more will security patches be released, even though vulnerabilities will continue to be revealed. What happens is when a vulnerability is fixed by any vendor, including Microsoft, they announce, today it's available to receive a free patch update for security vulnerability that we found in Windows 7, and the vulnerability is, and they describe it. At that point in time, the clock is ticking. The bad guys out there realize, oh, I didn't know there was a security vulnerability that if you did such and such, you can take advantage of it. Well, in fact, now they realize, oh, I can take advantage of that, and they can begin to attack in new and different ways. The difference is Microsoft won't be announcing those vulnerabilities anymore, and they won't be fixing them, but anyone who catches wind of vulnerabilities, which happens on all kinds of sites on the internet, are basically, it's a security issue. And for that reason, HIPAA requires, HIPAA has stated that anyone using a Windows 7 PC in their operations will no longer be HIPAA compliant. You will fail the HIPAA audit automatically if you have a Windows 7 PC. So the reason is the ongoing process of vulnerabilities being found and vulnerabilities being fixed is essential to good network security. And HIPAA actually doesn't just deal with Microsoft. The regulation says you can't be HIPAA compliant if you have any security patch updates that aren't being regularly, if you have an operating system in use that is no longer being updated. So that also applies to Windows Server 2008, which is in this very same category. So it's a compliance risk. And really, the way we think of this at PBSI is you have one or more Windows 7 PCs. 10 years from now, will you have them? Probably not. Therefore, you're going to replace them at some point in time. Why take the security risk and HIPAA risk? Obviously, everybody has budget issues, but this is something that really you're better off taking care of. And that is not from the perspective of a vendor trying to sell something. That's perspective from a vendor who does security work for clients all the time, and we see the reality of Windows 7 vulnerabilities. It's time to replace. So what's the truth? If you're not using Windows 7, is it more secure? Yes, it is. One of the main things they've done with Windows 8 and 10 is other software vendors can no longer get under the surface to have their programs execute before booting. When a PC is rebooted, if you've had a piece of malware on a Windows 7 PC, the malware can install something that can't be uninstalled. You reboot and it comes back again. You reboot and it comes back again. This is because of the very basic security flaw in Windows 7. So yes, Windows 10 is much more secure. The stability in Windows 7 is excellent, but it also is excellent in Windows 10. Is it faster to reboot Windows 10? Yes, it is. Is it faster in operations? By statistics, yes. By personal observance, I'm not sure that it is faster or slower. Is it cleaner? That's a matter of opinion. But the fact is, Windows 10 is a fine operating system. And if you have an opinion that dates back to a time where the reputation of Windows 10 was, oh, it's going to mess me up, people can't get used to it, that's really no longer the case. And we're going to spend a couple of minutes today talking about how can you avoid the setup time and the learning curve time that will negatively impact productivity when you implement Windows 10. The fact is, it can be immediately recognizable, very similar to Windows 7. It simply has to be set up correctly. And so we're going to provide some information about that. So Windows 10 is a fine operating system. What are our choices? Do we have a choice to continue to use Windows 7? Yes, on January 15, nothing falls apart. Windows 7 will continue to work just as it works now. You simply will be more vulnerable because there will be no updates and you will not be in HIPAA compliance. But will the PCs work? Sure, they will. Nobody expects any problems in that regard. So what are the choices? We can purchase new PCs, which a PC can cost, depending on the configuration. We recommend a solid-state hard drive with every PC. It's just so much faster. It's well worth the extra 150 or so bucks you spend to get a solid-state hard drive. So with a solid-state hard drive, a new PC, you're going to spend $700 bucks or so, including labor, $700 to $900 for a PC replacement. To upgrade, you're going to spend $199 with Microsoft for Windows 10 Professional, and then you're going to spend $100 to $200 in labor to upgrade the PC. And the time can be very short, or the time can be more complex. It's something that really varies based on the history of that PC. So for some of you, there is an option. If you have Windows 3 or Office 365 for your email, then, and you're using a Windows 7 PC, you have this option to spend $5.50 a month for Microsoft 365. Confusing in my opinion. Office 365 is well understood to be the Microsoft applications of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, Outlook. Microsoft 365, different than Office 365. Microsoft 365 includes Windows 10 Professional, and it's $20 a month, or if you're already using Office 365, it adds $5.50 a month. So this is basically an option only for those of you who use Office 365 and have a Windows 7 PC. So you have some choices. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Office 365 and licensing, But I will make this comment that there's a particular feature that is only available under Windows 10, and it's only available if you have Office 365 that's really useful for security, and it's this Advanced Threat Protection. It's a $2 a month add-on, and what it does, I will show you, but it's well worth spending $2 a month. This is just a hidden piece of information inside of this webcast for any of you using Office 365. You can contact PBSI, we can help you with this, or if you have a different vendor, ask them about this. It's something that's really important. So what does that $2 a month option do for you inside of Office 365, this thing called Advanced Threat Protection? Basically, it is click protection, and here's how it works. When you receive an email in Office 365, if you have this $2 ATP feature enabled, then when you make a click on a link or a click on an attachment, Microsoft routes that click to a sandbox in the cloud where it's fully detonated. If something bad's going to happen, the user simply gets back a message that says, that website was malicious. No further damage, nothing risked. Otherwise, without ATP, this message might have been replaced by the acquisition of ransomware and a message that comes up saying your PC is locked, your network's compromised. That $2 a month is a very, very inexpensive protection. So that's simply one benefit that becomes enabled if you have Windows 10. Okay, so how can you set up, how can you make Windows 10 easy to transition to, where you don't get feedback from employees? How do I do this? How do I do that? I used to know how to do that. And so I'm just going to go through a couple of Windows 10 setup recommendations. And each of you who are attending this webinar, we will send a copy of these setup recommendations for free, just as a, hope this helps you, things we've learned to help make a PC easy to transition and easy to use. And the focus is set up your PC so it is visually simple. Set up file access so that things are easy to find. There's a settings app that comes with Windows 10, and there are hundreds of choices, but we're going to boil them down to the ones that are key. There are some security settings that we're going to recommend, and some browser settings that if you don't know about these things, you just might not do this, and you end up using Bing as your search engine, and you think, well, I hate this, I'd rather be using Google. So there are some simple settings, and we're going to show you how to make those settings. And one comment, if you have some really old applications running on your Windows 7 PCs, you may have some compatibility issues with those running on Windows 10, but I will show you here shortly how you can know that in advance rather than just running into it at time of upgrade. So I'm going to go now to this Windows 10 setup recommendations document that you'll get a copy of. And the focus is make your PC secure, make it clean, make it fast, and make it consistent and supportable. So some of the recommendations here, all of these recommendations have to do with using the Settings app in Windows 10. And if you haven't used Windows 10, this may be foreign to you, but I'm going to start with the Start menu. So the Start menu in Windows 10, I'm going to say this is a reasonable start menu because I like all my applications to be the same size. I like to group them system apps and business apps, and how you set that, it really isn't important, but there are a couple of key choices, and one is to choose the setting that doesn't make your menu fill the whole screen. That was the big problem with Windows 8, is it filled the whole screen and people thought, I don't know what this PC is doing anymore. Another setup recommendation is to turn off Live Tile. So you notice that there are a couple of things on my screen that change as if we waited long enough, you'd see the temperature change or something. There are things called Live Tile that we recommend turning off, which is simply right-clicking and saying turning Live Tile off, and no longer will they start flashing and displaying, because you might see some Windows 10 menus where things are just changing and flashing and they're different sizes, and it's simply for a lot of people confusing. So setting your Start button so that it doesn't fill the whole screen and turning Live Tile off, that's very useful. Then taskbar setup. So I'm going to actually go into the Settings app in Windows 10, and here is the Settings app, and there are different basically menu choices: system, devices, phone, and so forth. And I'm going to focus on taskbar setup just for a moment, and that's inside of system and pardon me, taskbar setup is something that's enabled pardon me. I read my own instructions from the taskbar menu, so I can change my taskbar settings down here, and the choices that I want to make essentially are: I want to make sure that my File Explorer is present on my taskbar, so it looks like this when I start it up, and that I set up some favorites. And we've described how to set up these favorites so that of all the things you might get to on your network, you can go straight to, I go to financials, or I go to our price book, or I go to information about various vendors, and I have favorites set up. And in this document that we'll pass on to you, it will explain how to make these taskbar settings, how to make File Explorer settings, how to set up quick access. This is the replacement for what used to be called favorites, and all of that's described in here. Then personalization, you can change background, colors. Some important things on the lock screen: you want to set timeout settings that require a password. You want to leave your PCs turned on all the time, but after 15 minutes or 10 minutes, you can have your monitor turn off and require a password. So here the settings are identified here, required in order to really set your PC that it runs most quickly and with best security. So associated in red here, you see power and sleep. So it's inside of your system app, and I'm going to go back here, and you see system, and inside of that is power settings, power and sleep, and there are recommendations for how to set this up. Most importantly, tell your PC to go to sleep never. This is something that, if you have it set otherwise, will cause your system, one, not to be as quick when you turn it on, because it'll go through some startup things and some scans that have been delayed when it was sleeping, and the important security applications updates that you want to take place at night don't take place at night. They take place when you first turn on your PC and it comes back from sleep mode. So just a couple of really important things, and there are some other things in here that are useful. One of that I'll mention, and then I'll stop with the details of this, but privacy is something that with all vendors, Microsoft included, they're not necessarily interested in your privacy as much as you might be. So there is a setting, excuse me, I'm going to get back to my settings here. There is a setting related to privacy. So all I need to do is find my privacy setting here. Well, I'm not very good at this. Inside of the settings app, I'm going to make one more attempt to try and find my privacy. Oh, here it is. This is what I want to mention. These first two options out of the box, Windows 10 will have these first two turned on. That's the default. Let advertisers use my information. We recommend turning that off. Let websites provide locally relevant content. We recommend turning it off. You're simply publishing information from your PC that you don't really necessarily, I mean, it's a personal choice, but if you've ever gotten a creepy email about a product that you did a web search for yesterday, and now you get an email today about a similar product, you're thinking, how could they possibly know that? Well, here's how. So you can affect those things just by knowing what to do. So making sure you have antivirus on your PCs, default settings for your browsers. These are some of the things that can just make your experience with Windows 10 be more consistent and more fast. So that's free information. So when you come to making the decision, okay, we do either want to upgrade or replace our Windows 7 PCs, do you want to hire someone from the outside to do it, or do you want to do it yourself? Either way is perfectly fine. We've included here some options. If you do it yourself, you'll want to download this app compatibility checker in advance of making the update. And what this will do is it will test your PC for any applications that might not be compatible with Windows 10. It's not 100% accurate, but generally speaking, it will tell you if you're going to have any compatibility issues in advance. If you're going to do it yourself, before you update your PC, you want to make sure and back up PC contents. And then there are specific setting instructions depending on where you're coming from, whether you're coming from Windows 10 or Windows 8 or Windows XP. There are some resources that are available. For most PBSI clients, for most folks, you don't want to run into unexpected hassles or waste time doing things that somebody else can do more efficiently. And PBSI is happy to help. Or if you have an IT company separate from PBSI, assuming you have the right folks involved in doing it, it can be faster, less expensive, and avoid productivity loss. So that's your choice. So summary, what should we do about Windows 7? First of all, plan ahead. We're already in November. We're within 2 months now of the end of life. I would say the time to execute a plan is now. And how do you make the decision which PCs to replace versus the PCs that we're going to upgrade? General rule of thumb, if you have 2 GB of RAM on your PC or less, that means it's likely old enough to be not worth upgrading, because it's still going to be an old, slow PC, even after you have Windows 10 on it. If you have 4 GB or more, 4 GB would be in the middle. If you have 8 GB or more, you probably have a PC that is recent enough that it's worth paying the $199 to Microsoft and upgrading the PC, so not replace it. So most people we find with 4 GB or 2 GB end up replacing. But these are choices. If you have a PC that's running just fine and the user of that PC says, it's fine, it's running well, then consider upgrading it. If the person is saying, yeah, it's slow, it pauses all the time, then that's a PC that you'd want to likely replace. What you want is long-term productivity if you're like most of us. So that's it for our content today. You're welcome to log off. I want to thank you for your attendance. I hope this has been helpful. You will receive by email this Windows 10 setup recommendations. And if you'd like to contact us, we're happy to help with hardware at cost. And we do some other security things that we can install on your PCs at the time you do upgrades or replacements. So feel free to ask us if you'd like information about this. But other than your feedback about what you'd like after this webinar, I want to say thank you for your attendance. We're finished with content, and good luck with your Windows 7 replacement or upgrade project. Hope everybody has a good day. Thank you.